March 11th brings Starbrand to Marvel Snap. I'll revisit Eson and showcase Starbrand theory-crafted decks. Plus, we'll see if Skaar and Phastos deserve a spot in your collection. Let's unleash the Starbrand force. The quick recap on Eson is he's a good card. Now, as expected, he fits in very specific decks. You're either going to pair him with Agamotto and some other cards potentially, or the Shield hand generation type cards, Victoria hand type maybe. So those are the decks it belongs in. Yeah, you wouldn't have any other reason to run him in any other decks. So if you like those decks, he is a good addition to that deck. And if you don't, like me, then there's no use in getting him. Here's the entire Spotlight lineup. We have Starbrand, of course, the new card, a 3/10. Ugh, is power creep real? We will find out. Next, we have Skaar, who was recently changed to be a 7 cost. So not as good as he once was, but still overall a card people find uses for. And then we have Phastos, who on his initial release was really looked down upon. And as time has progressed, people have found creative uses for him, people being me, and we will get into these cards individually. Starbrand is just a big dude, and at 310, he has a pretty massive drawback, essentially making him a 3/4 if you don't mitigate his negative ongoing ability. So for me, the first thing that jumped out was Sauron decks, which of course you will see in one of my theory crafted decks. And then the other deck is Skaar Surtur, because it's a cheap 10 power card, but you really want to mitigate this downside in the worst way. So in most decks, you will probably have some sort of support and synergy card with Starbrand that removes that ongoing effect. There are a couple of cards. You think Zero, you have Sauron, of course, which I mentioned, and Enchantress, because it's an ongoing. So, or an opponent's Echo. So those are the ways really you can try to get rid of that downside and just have him be a big 3/10. Let's get to these theory crafted decks. So for Series 2, there aren't many options, as you would expect. So, of course, we have Starbrand. We paired him with Enchantress to try to remove that negative downside. Lizard also has a negative downside that can be removed with Enchantress. And then the rest of the deck just fills out with somewhat decent cards at the Series 2 level. If you need to soak energy, Sunspot, Reposition Power, Nightcrawler, Rocket Raccoon, and Gamora, people have seen how good they are out of the recent Sanctum Showdown event. And Doctor Strange is a spicy pick to rearrange some of that big power. Maybe you dodge a Shang-Chi. Because of that, Storm can lock off a lane, and you can continue to soak with Sunspot, or you've built up with Medusa, or you followed up with a Star-Lord, Gamora, or Rocket Raccoon. So a lot of good options at the Series 2 slot for this type of deck. Let's get to the Series 3. For the Series 3 version, I am stealing from myself. This is a deck I created, I think, for Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, but he is not a Series 3 card. So we still have similar philosophies. You have your big 10 power plus cards. You have Sauron, which strips the negative downsides of a Red Skull, Typhoid Mary, Ebony Maw, and Starbrand and Lizard. Zero, like I mentioned during Starbrand's section, is valuable as well. The Heimdall Surprise. You have 2 tech cards in Shang-Chi and Enchantress. You have Adam Warlock to draw into more of your cards. So this was a very good performing deck. Prior, this is a deck, again, I used with Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, and Adam Warlock in this deck more or less functions similarly. So you have the tools, and this is a fantastic deck to climb with. It is full-on spicy time. How else can you get rid of Starbrand's negative ongoing? You can eat the card with Venom.
And then we will eat your face right off your head.
So this deck is somewhat of a... Listen, this thing is weird. You have a bunch of cards that can destroy other cards. Shang-Chi, Negasonic Teenage Warhead, Carnage, Venom. You have X-23 to cheat out power. Nico can sometimes get in on that destroy. Adam Warlock to draw into because it's a weird deck and you want to draw as many cards as possible. You are, in all likelihood, building up your null. You can lock in power with Venom. Gladiator's fantastic, especially when paired with Shang-Chi. You can typically get rid of almost everything, unless it's 8 or 9 power that Gladiator pulls. And this, I'm really hopeful, could take off. There have been similar decks like this, that you build up a large null on your path to playing him. And this is a very different way to do it. And this channel is all about being different and unique, and this is definitely a unique deck. Skaar is just another big dude that can get discounted to be cheaper. In Skaar Surtur, you can get him down to 1 cost in typical games. You're not getting him down to free most of the time anymore. And this also fits into Hela, a good way to protect Hela along with Death as well, to stop her from getting discounted with a Lady Sif. So Skaar fits in a couple of other decks that I've shown on this channel before, off meta of course. So overall, Skaar has his uses and will continue to have his uses. Just being able to discount a high power card, Sasquatch, Mockingbird, along those similar lines, will almost always have a use in Marvel Snap. Now Phastos is very handsome. So with Phastos, people have started to slowly come around to him. I always liked him, but he wasn't that great. But depending on the deck you put him in, he can have significant impact, and it's also unpredictable for your opponent. He goes in things like Surfer. He potentially goes in Agent Venom type decks because he's 3 power already, and he can further increase the power to 5 of your cards or decrease the cost, which is fantastic. So there are a lot of interesting uses for Phastos. He still doesn't get used that often, but if you get him, you may be able to find a use for him ultimately. So will I be unlocking Starbrand? Let me tell you what, I really want to, but am I? No, I will not be unlocking Starbrand. I think this is ultimately a good card. This is as easy to be right about in advance as possible because he goes in 2 places. Now, the discussion might be, where is he best in? Is he best in Sauron? Or is he best in Skaar Surtur? Are they about the same? In Skaar Surtur, there's really no way to mitigate this downside, but also, do you really need to? You only need to win 2 lanes, so that +3 may not make that much of a difference. You're already playing 10 power cards, so that is TBD. But ultimately, I think that he will find a home in Sauron pretty easily, and that is the tempting part because I kind of like the deck I featured on this channel a little bit ago with Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross that can pull these 10 power cards out of your deck in a Sauron build, and which just allows you to more consistently draw Sauron because you are drawing other cards out of your deck. So that deck I like a lot. I would love to be able to play Starbrand, but ultimately I don't play that deck enough to justify using keys on, and so Starbrand is an ultimate pass for me. But if you decide to get him because you like those decks, he will fit naturally into that, and you should be happy with him. Thanks to all the members of the channel, and thank you to everybody that watches this deep into the video. It helps the channel grow and grow and grow. So the recap Starbrand is a good card. He will be strong in 2 specific decks, one related to the next card, and Sauron, of course, which I've mentioned plenty. Skaar is a good card. He really mainly goes in one deck, Skaar Surtur, but also there are other decks that can play him to good effect and reduce his cost, because you don't need to reduce his cost to 1. Sometimes even reducing his cost to 3, a 312 is just fantastic. We're talking about a 310. So if you can get a 312, that's even better. And Phastos is a bad card. What? Huh? That's right. Phastos, if I have to pick, I'd say he's a bad card. You will find uses for him, but almost all of the time he's just not going to be a necessary and key and important piece in any given deck. He ultimately is replaceable, and so if you are replaceable in a deck, you're probably not that good. So he gets branded with the rejected seal. That said, I still like the card, and you'll still see me put him in decks because I like having fun with off-meta decks. Thanks again, and until next time.